Mackenzie Dern's long climb to the top of the UFC finally paid off in Abu Dhabi. But instead of soaking in her first championship victory, she's already thinking about what comes next. Her unanimous decision win over Virna Jandiroba at UFC 321 was not just a career-defining performance, it was the realization of a dream she's chased since entering the octagon in 2018. Yet, as soon as the belt was wrapped around her waist, the new strawweight queen made it clear that she's far from satisfied. The fight itself was a grueling 5-round test of will and skill, one that forced Dern to dig deep against one of the most technical grapplers in the division. She displayed a level of composure and maturity that had sometimes eluded her in earlier fights, mixing sharp striking combinations with her signature BJJ transitions. Jandiroba refused to wilt, but Dern's constant pressure and slick reversals on the mat ultimately secured the unanimous decision and the vacant 115-pound title. When her name was announced, Dern broke into tears, the culmination of years of criticism, setbacks, and personal growth. "I feel a little sore, but I feel amazing," Dern said with a grin in her post-fight interview. "We let it all out there. It's like a dream come true. But every time I reach a goal, I make a new one. I'm already thinking about getting back in the gym because I know there's a huge target on my back now. I want to be ready for what's coming." That mentality sums up where Dern is mentally. Determined to prove that this isn't a one-off achievement, but the start of a real reign. She knows what happens to first-time champions who take too long to return. The division keeps moving, contenders stay hungry, and the target on her back only gets bigger. When asked about potential opponents, Dern didn't hesitate to show that she's willing to face anyone. "I don't know how much say I have now being champion," she admitted, "but I'm here to defend it. Whoever gets sent to me, I'll be ready for. I don't know if Zhang Weili will come back, but I definitely like to fight Tatiana Suarez. Maybe she gets one more fight in, but I want to keep testing myself against strong grapplers." It's an interesting position for the new champion, with Zhang Weili currently tied up in a flyweight super fight against Valentina Shevchenko. Tatiana Suarez seems like the next logical challenger. Suarez, who's looked unstoppable since her return from injury, presents a fascinating stylistic matchup, a relentless wrestler with a suffocating top game against one of the best pure submission artists in the sport. For fans of high-level grappling, a potential Dern versus Suarez title fight would be a dream come true. Still, Dern's tone made it clear she isn't chasing fame or marquee names. Her focus is squarely on evolution, on becoming the kind of champion who grows stronger with every defense. That mindset has defined her recent resurgence, especially after previous setbacks left some questioning whether she could ever reach this level. Now, she's not just a champion, she's a symbol of perseverance, of turning criticism into fuel. "I know what it's like to be the hunter, and now I'm the hunted," Dern said with a smile. "That just means I have to work even harder. I've made mistakes before, but this version of me knows what it takes to stay here." For Mackenzie Dern, UFC Gold isn't an endpoint, it's a new beginning. The celebration will be short because while most would be content to take a break after reaching the mountaintop, she's already lacing her gloves back up. The next camp, the next challenge, the next evolution, that's what drives her. "I just want to be active. I want to keep getting better, keep fighting the best, and show everyone what real jiu-jitsu and heart can do." And with that, the newly crowned champion walked off the post-fight stage, already thinking about who might be standing across from her when the octagon door closes again. Mokaev's exit from the UFC remains one of the strangest stories in recent memory. An undefeated top 10 contender released from the promotion at just 25 years old. After 7 fights, a spotless record, and a win over Manel Kape, the UFC chose not to renew his contract, with Dana White vaguely citing bad shit behind the scenes and claiming the matchmakers weren't big fans. The comments hit Mokaev harder than the release itself. Not because he lost his spot on the roster, but because his name was suddenly being dragged through the mud. For Mokaev, the frustration wasn't about money or opportunity, it was about reputation. He said, "If I did something wrong, I wouldn't get upset. But when you don't do anything and people make you look like a bad guy, that's what hurts. If I was so hard to deal with, the UFC wouldn't have kept me for 7 fights. They renewed my contract twice. If I was really a problem, they'd have cut me straight away. Since signing with Brave CF, Mokaev has found a home where he feels respected. The promotion immediately gave him a title shot, and officials have called him a consummate professional, a sharp contrast to how he was painted in his UFC exit. He revealed that several organizations reached out once he became a free agent, including PFL, who even offered him a chance to fight Pacheco for the bantamweight title on short notice. They offered me to step into the Grand Prix on 10 days' notice. I said yes, but I couldn't get the visa in time. That's what really got me upset. People saying PFL didn't want me when it wasn't true. Despite how things ended, Mokaev holds no grudges toward the UFC. In fact, he credits the organization for building his name and helping him establish financial stability. He said, "They gave me a platform, they paid me well, and they helped me get to where I am. I was renting before, now I have my own home. I'll always be thankful for that. I don't hate anyone, I'm just continuing my dream." Ironically, the release might have made him even more famous. He said, "I think getting cut actually made my name bigger. People who didn't know me before now know who I am, the undefeated guy who got released from the UFC. If I ever come back, all eyes will be on the flyweight division. Brave champion versus UFC champion. Imagine that." For now, Mokaev is focused on what's next. He's preparing for his flyweight title bout on November 7th and says Brave has treated him better than he could have imagined. He said, "I think I'm the highest paid flyweight in the world right now. They take care of me, they listen, they let me be part of the business. I can walk into the office, sit down with the president, and talk for hours about my future. They support me in everything, not just as a fighter, but as a person." The UFC conversation will always follow him, but Mokaev seems content where he is, free of drama, financially secure, and finally in control of his own story. If a return to the octagon ever happens, it'll be on his terms. Until then, he's set on proving that his career didn't peak in the UFC, it only started there. Alex Pereira isn't one to let talk slide, especially when it rewrites history. After reclaiming the UFC light heavyweight title with a ruthless TKO of Magomed Ankalaev earlier this month, Pereira has been riding high, but that didn't stop him from firing back at Joaquin Buckley for resurfacing an old claim about a fight that never happened. Buckley, who's carved out a reputation for his knockout power and outspoken confidence, recently told a story on his YouTube channel about how he almost fought Pereira back in 2022. According to him, the UFC offered the matchup when both men were still middleweights. Buckley said he accepted immediately, only for Pereira to turn it down on short notice. He wasn't able to take the fight because they said they wouldn't be ready in time, Buckley claimed. "I was planning on knocking that man out." It's a bold statement considering what Pereira has become since, a 2-division UFC champion who's flattened elite opponents across weight classes. Pereira, unsurprisingly, didn't let the comment go unanswered. The Brazilian took to Instagram to share what looked like a direct message exchange from 2022, where he appeared to remind Buckley that their paths didn't cross because Buckley was actually one of the first to back away. "Why did you send me this post?" Pereira wrote. "Of the 15 fighters that ran, you were the first. Now go back to the end of the line." The jab was classic Pereira, understated but icy, a reminder that he keeps receipts and doesn't forget who said what along the way. The exchange reignited a small but lively debate among fans. Buckley's supporters praised his willingness to fight anyone, anywhere, while Pereira's camp pointed to the absurdity of suggesting that the then middleweight monster was ducking someone when he was already lined up for a rocket-fast climb toward Ciryl Adesanya. Within months of the alleged call-out, Pereira had knocked out Sean Strickland, captured the middleweight title, and stamped his name in UFC history as one of the most terrifying strikers ever to step into the cage. Ironically, both men have since left the division behind. Buckley now plies his trade at welterweight, where he's become one of the more explosive, unpredictable fighters in the top 15.
His recent loss to Kamaru Usman slowed his rise, but didn't dull his ambition or his mouth. Pereira, meanwhile, has transformed into a crossover phenomenon. His second run as light heavyweight champion has elevated him into the rare category of fighters who can call their shots, and he's openly teasing a move to heavyweight, where a showdown with Jon Jones would be the kind of event that redefines divisions. For Pereira, Buckley's comments are a small distraction in the middle of much bigger ambitions. Still, his response shows that no slight goes unnoticed. In his world, where respect and pride carry as much weight as championship belts, keeping the record straight matters. Buckley might see it as old history, but for Pereira, it's a reminder that every chapter of his rise, even the ones that didn't happen, helped build the aura he carries today. If the two ever did meet, it would have been a fascinating stylistic clash, Buckley's compact explosiveness against Pereira's towering precision. But that moment's long gone. Now Pereira is chasing legacy-defining fights at heavyweight, while Buckley continues to climb the welterweight ranks. Different divisions, different trajectories, but one brief, messy bit of unfinished business that both men clearly remember.
TJ Dillashaw has never been shy about voicing controversial takes, and his latest comments about Tom Aspinall's UFC 321 debacle have stirred the pot even further. The former bantamweight champion became the newest fighter to question the legitimacy of Aspinall's injury, implying that the heavyweight title holder may have looked for an exit after Ciryl Gane's accidental double eye poke abruptly ended the fight. Speaking on the Jackson podcast, Dillashaw acknowledged that the foul was entirely on Gane, but still hinted that something about Aspinall's reaction didn't sit right with him. Look, first and foremost, it was a foul, and Ciryl Gane is the one to blame for it. But from the optics and the way it looked, his eye was closed when he got poked in it. He was saying he couldn't see, but wasn't even trying to open his eye. Dillashaw admitted that he wasn't in the cage and didn't know the full story, but pointed to how other fighters have pushed through similar fouls. Obviously, I have no idea, I'm not there, but you see the pictures afterwards and his eye looks fine. I've seen a whole finger go in someone's eye and they keep fighting. I don't know, I mean, it's all speculation, but I feel like he might have taken the easy way out. His comments echo those of Aljamain Sterling, who was widely criticized earlier in the week for casting doubt on Aspinall's injury claims. Sterling's comments drew backlash from fans and fellow fighters alike, especially after Aspinall's father and coach, Andy Aspinall, revealed that the champion still cannot see out of his right eye and that his left vision has worsened since the incident. According to the family, further tests and a CT scan are scheduled to determine whether there's bone damage, a clear sign that the injury was far more serious than it might have looked from the outside. Dillashaw's insinuation has not gone over well with fans, many of whom see it as another instance of a fighter undermining a peer's suffering for the sake of controversy. Aspinall has long been praised for his toughness and composure, having battled through knee surgery and over a year of inactivity before returning to capture the undisputed heavyweight title. For many, the idea that he would deliberately bow out of a title defense is hard to swallow. Still, Dillashaw's remarks have reignited an uncomfortable debate in MMA circles, one about the blurry line between grit and self-preservation. Fighters are conditioned to push through pain, but at what cost? Aspinall, by all accounts, couldn't see out of either eye after the poke, leaving the referee little choice but to call the fight. Even UFC CEO Dana White defended the stoppage, calling it a shitty ending to an otherwise promising matchup. It's also hard to ignore the irony of Dillashaw, a fighter who himself retired after a failed comeback from serious shoulder injuries, questioning another athlete's durability. Many fans were quick to point out that Dillashaw fought injured against Aljamain Sterling in 2022 and paid dearly for it, suffering a quick defeat and severe criticism for entering the cage unfit to compete. For now, Aspinall remains sidelined as he continues medical evaluations, and the UFC is expected to book a rematch with Gane once he's cleared. As for Dillashaw, his comments will likely ensure he's part of the conversation for a while, not for a comeback, but for adding fuel to one of the most heated controversies in recent UFC memory.
Larissa Pacheco's story is one of rare persistence and quiet evolution. A fighter who left the UFC as a teenager, rebuilt herself through years of grit and high-level experience, and now wants to come full circle. At 29, the Brazilian powerhouse has already accomplished what few have. She's the only woman to ever hand Kayla Harrison a professional loss, snapping the Olympic judoka's undefeated streak in one of the biggest upsets in women's MMA history. But despite her rise to stardom under the PFL banner, a run that included championship gold and a 10-1 stretch across her last 11 fights, Pacheco is once again a free agent, and she's making it clear that her next goal is a UFC return. Speaking with MMAfighting.com, Pacheco reflected on how far she's come since her first run with the promotion, back when she was just a teenager thrust into the sport's deepest waters. I was 19 years old when I first got into the UFC. I didn't even have 10% of the resources I have now in terms of weight cutting, fight quality, everything. I was just a kid, and they threw me against two champions, Jessica and Germaine de Randamie. I was at the height of my innocence in the sport, just getting started. It's been 12 years since my last UFC fight. Look what I've built since then. That stretch outside the UFC was transformative. Pacheco sharpened her striking, improved her conditioning, and became one of the most dangerous finishers in women's MMA. Her PFL run saw her demolish opponents with raw power and precision, earning a reputation as a brutal finisher capable of ending fights early. Her upset win over Kayla Harrison in the 2022 PFL Championship, a 5-round clinic in composure and striking, proved she wasn't just a puncher. She was an evolved, intelligent fighter with championship poise. Still, Pacheco's tone when talking about her UFC aspirations is humble, even patient. She understands how the game works and isn't demanding immediate opportunities. She's making it clear that her next goal is a UFC return. Her early UFC tenure was brief and unforgiving. A short-notice debut against future champions de Randamie and Andrade left her winless and cut from the roster before she even turned 21. For many, that would have been the end. For Pacheco, it was the beginning of a long climb through adversity. Since then, she's built a resume most fighters dream of. Across her 12-3 record in the PFL, Pacheco showcased knockout power and technical refinement, taking out a list of durable contenders and avenging earlier losses. Aside from the defeats to Harrison and the legendary Chris Cyborg, her performances were dominant, and in avenging the Harrison loss, she capped one of the most complete arcs in women's MMA. Now, with her PFL contract complete, the timing for a return feels right. The UFC's women's divisions, particularly bantamweight and featherweight, are in flux. With Kayla Harrison now reigning as UFC bantamweight champion, the storyline practically writes itself. The only woman to have beaten Harrison, looking for her chance to do it again, this time inside the octagon. That rematch potential, coupled with Pacheco's newfound experience and maturity, make her a compelling addition to the UFC roster. Beyond the headlines, though, her motivation runs deeper than revenge or spotlight. It's about validation. Pacheco has spent more than a decade proving herself outside the UFC's walls. Now she wants to step back inside them, not as a prospect, but as a veteran with championship credentials. "I've fought the best," she said. "I've learned, I've grown, and I've earned everything I have. I want to show the world that I belong with the best again, not the 19-year-old me who was thrown into the fire, but the fighter I've become." If the UFC calls, Larissa Pacheco will be ready, not for a second chance, but for the continuation of a journey that's finally come full circle.
Canadian MMA will be well represented to close out 2025, as both Jillian Robertson and Jamie Lynn Horth have officially been booked for fights on the December 13th UFC Fight Night card in Las Vegas. Set to take place at the UFC Apex, the event will serve as the promotion's final show of the calendar year. For Robertson and Horth, it's an opportunity to end the year on a high note and keep Canadian talent in the UFC spotlight. Jillian Robertson, one of Canada's most seasoned and respected female fighters, will square off against Brazil's Yasmin Lucindo in what promises to be a meaningful strawweight clash. Robertson, who's known for her relentless grappling and slick submission game, has steadily built her reputation as one of the most dangerous ground specialists in the division. Lucindo, however, represents a major challenge. At just 22 years old, she's already climbed to the number 7 spot in the rankings, riding a wave of momentum built on her sharp striking and improved takedown defense. Their matchup isn't just a stylistic contrast, it's a fight with clear implications for the title picture. With Mackenzie Dern recently crowned as the new strawweight champion and the division still recalibrating, every ranked fight matters. Robertson currently sits at number 10, and a win over Lucindo could propel her directly into contender territory. For Lucindo, defending her higher ranking against a veteran like Robertson would cement her status as a legitimate threat to the upper echelon of the division. The winner could very well find themselves one victory away from a potential title eliminator in early 2026. Meanwhile, Jamie Lynn Horth returns for her own test against Czech Republic's Teresa Bleda in a rebooked matchup that's been nearly a year in the making. The two were originally scheduled to fight in June before Bleda was forced to withdraw. Vanessa Demopoulos stepped in on short notice, and Horth took full advantage, earning a unanimous decision victory. Now she finally gets the opponent she'd been preparing for all along. Horth, a former BFL and LFA champion, has compiled a solid 3-2 UFC record since making her debut and continues to evolve as a complete mixed martial artist. Known for her conditioning and high-volume striking, she's shown she can adapt her style to different types of opponents. Bleda, on the other hand, brings a unique mix of length, athleticism, and ground control. After making her way to the UFC through Contender Series, she stumbled in her debut against Natalia Silva, but bounced back strongly by defeating Gabriela Fernandez. However, after a long layoff of over 2 years, questions linger about her timing and readiness heading into this fight. The Horth vs. Bleda matchup carries more intrigue than its placement on the card might suggest. It's a chance for Horth to solidify herself as one of the most promising Canadian women in the UFC, while for Bleda, it's a crucial return that could determine whether she remains a long-term player in the organization. For Canadian fans, having both Robertson and Horth featured on the same card is a rare treat, and both fights carry legitimate stakes. Robertson's bout could directly influence the strawweight title picture heading into 2026, while Horth's fight may open the door to a ranked opportunity in early 2026 if she wins decisively. As the UFC wraps up its year in Las Vegas, all eyes will be on how these two athletes perform, both representing Canada on a stage that could set the tone for their next big moves.